Okay, what if I told you there's a way to dramatically boost your garden's harvest for, well, basically nothing? I know, it sounds kind of like a gardening myth, right? But the source material we're looking at today says it's tied to a really fascinating, and some might even say suppressed, piece of agricultural history. So let's dig in.
I mean, look at this. You're reading that correctly. The claim here is that you could get up to 3 times the harvest by doing nothing more than burying a couple of ordinary coins. That's a pretty wild statement, and right away it gets you thinking,
Yeah, is it just too simple to actually be true? It really sounds like it could be. But according to the story here, this isn't some new age fad. Nope, this is presented as a buried secret. A super simple, super effective technique that, well, maybe some powerful people didn't want the average gardener to know about. So this is way more than just a random garden hack. It's framed as this piece of forgotten knowledge. Something with a really interesting, kind of mysterious past.
And that brings us right to the heart of the mystery. If this thing was so effective, and the claims go back to the 1930s, where did it go? Why did it just disappear from mainstream farming for nearly 100 years?
So check out this timeline, because this is where it gets really weird. Back in the 1930s, this wasn't some fringe idea. Scientists and farmers were seriously looking into it. Then in 1936, a British committee runs official trials and reports, get this, astonishing results. And then, poof, silence. The committee gets dissolved, the research just stops, the reports vanish, and the whole thing pretty much fades into obscurity until right now, when home gardeners are starting to dig it back up.
so why did it vanish?
Well, the theory presented in the source comes down to something really simple: money. You can't patent a method that just uses a couple of coins and a nail. You can't bottle it and sell it on a shelf. The idea is that it was just too cheap, too easy, and it couldn't compete with the massive, profitable chemical fertilizer industry that was just starting to take off.
All right, so that's the whole mysterious backstory, which is pretty cool. But now for the big question: how in the world is this even supposed to work? Well, the science behind it is actually surprisingly simple.
The official name for this is electroculture. And all it really means is using a small, totally natural electric current in the soil. Now, we're not talking about shocking your plants or anything like that. It's this super gentle energy that's meant to stimulate all the good stuff happening down at the root level. So here's the magic behind it. When you bury 2 different kinds of metals, say copper and zinc, into wet soil, the soil itself acts like the fluid in a battery. It's called an electrolyte. And this creates a tiny natural battery, a galvanic battery. It generates this very small, gentle flow of electrons through the soil between the 2 pieces of metal. So what does that little current actually do? Well, the idea is that it gives the plant's roots a little nudge. It stimulates them to grow longer, to branch out more, to create this much bigger network. And a bigger root network basically supercharges the plant's ability to suck up water and nutrients. You get a healthier, stronger plant from the ground up. Okay, theory is cool, but how do you actually do this? Let's get our hands dirty, so to speak, and walk through the famous and super easy 2-coin trick. Seriously, it is this simple. First, you just need to get your metals. So find a copper coin and something with zinc on it, like a newer penny or even a galvanized nail. Then, pick your spot. This works great for plants that are heavy feeders, like tomatoes or peppers. Dig a little hole, maybe 4 to 6 inches deep. Now here's the key. Place the copper and the zinc about 6 inches to a foot apart from each other in the hole. Then, just cover them up with soil. That's it. You're done. You've literally just installed a tiny battery in your garden. And hey, if you don't have coins, no problem at all. The principle is the same. All you need are 2 different metals. So a piece of copper wire and an old iron nail? Perfect. That'll work just as well. In fact, some of the really old methods just used a single copper rod stuck straight down into the ground, almost like an antenna pulling energy from the atmosphere. All right, so you've set up your little garden battery. What happens next? What's the payoff? Let's take a look at the results that people, both today's gardeners and those original researchers, have reported seeing. And here we are, back to that jaw-dropping claim from the beginning. Reports from those original 1936 trials and what people are saying today claim yields that aren't just, 10% better. We're talking 2, even 3 times more produce from the treated soil. I mean, that is an absolutely massive difference. And it's not just about getting more stuff. The list of other reported benefits is pretty long. We're talking stronger stems, bigger leaves, sweeter fruit, and plants that are just tougher, more resistant to things like drought and pests. And maybe the best part? Once you set it up, it just keeps working for years with 0 maintenance. Set it and forget it. So what do we do with all this? Well, I think the best way to look at this isn't as some settled scientific fact,
but more like a really exciting, really easy experiment that you can run in your own backyard.
Now let's be really clear about something. This is not a magic wand. It's not a replacement for good gardening. You still have to do the work. You need good soil, you need compost, you need to water your plants. Think of this as a natural booster, an extra little advantage you're giving your garden on top of all the other good stuff you're already doing.
So, if this has you curious, the absolute best way to know for sure is to test it yourself. It's easy. Set up 2 identical garden beds with the same soil and the same plants, but only install the metals in one of them. That's your experiment, the other one is your control. Then, just watch what happens. Take some notes, snap some pictures throughout the season, and then at harvest time, you can compare them side by side. The proof, one way or another, will be right there in your hands.
And you know, it really makes you think, doesn't it? If a trick this simple and potentially this powerful could just get lost for more than 80 years, it makes you wonder, what other simple secrets are out there just waiting to be rediscovered? Maybe even buried right in your own garden?